Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Katta Mapes joining us here live today again, the founder and owner of Creating Conscious Connections. She's based out of Tucson, Arizona, but helping people all over the world as an intuitive life coach, a consultant, writer, teacher, and even a real estate agent, right? In Arizona, is that true?
A little bit of everything. Yes.
I know she does it all. Woman who wears many hats. Also, did I mention bilingual or not yet?
No, I am bilingual in Spanish. Spanish and
Wow.
English.
Impressive. Well, how about I'll have you do the honors. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, Katta. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jill. I have lived in Tucson, Arizona for about 47 years, and I came here from South America. I lived in Colombia
Mm-hmm.
for 4 years, and before that, I grew up in Ohio. And
Okay.
in 1985, I worked in the school district. I have a master's in bilingual education and a master's in counseling from the University of Arizona. And at one point, I was able to get a sabbatical. That
Wow.
was in 1985. And back then, Pan Am had a deal where you could fly anywhere they go for $2,500
Oh my gosh.
around the world to 18 different countries.
Really?
And so I love to travel. I love the adventure. But now that I'm older, I'm not as inclined to travel so much. So I retired from the Tucson Unified School District, and since then I have some other jobs. I also worked for uh, a program called the IELTS International English Language Testing System as a speaking and writing examiner for people to determine their level of English proficiency. And then I also had a couple years where I was working in a shelter for unaccompanied minors as a bilingual clinician. So I was a mental health counselor for the young ones who were there as a shelter in Tucson. And I've written some books, and I'm just, I'm not an adventure for travel, but I am an adventure for learning and sharing what I have learned and what whatever I can come. I say that I like to share the wisdom of the ages from throughout the sages. So it's kind of a broad spectrum of things.
Well, thank you for being here. Let me just off the top ask how we can contact you. What is your website, phone number, any social media pages?
I am not as tech savvy as I would like to be, so the
That's
best
okay.
way to get a hold of me
The phone. That's
is
fine.
email
Perfect.
Katta, K-A-T-A dot Mapes, M-A-P-E-S, at gmail.com. And that's the best way to get a hold of me. Um, and I am on the computer a lot, so if someone writes to me, I'll respond to them pretty quickly.
Perfect. Well, I know today we're going to kind of get your backstory, dive into, who you are, how you started, and what made you, start this. So would you mind starting off and giving us a little of that background? Thank you.
Sure, sure. Well, there's kind of a succession of events. As I mentioned, I worked in the Tucson Unified School District. I was a bilingual counselor. I've been in grades K through 12. And during that time, what I loved the most was the guidance curriculum, where I'd actually go into classrooms and teach um, different things about basically what is
Yeah.
now called social emotional learning, or SEL. And in 2000, I published a book called Stop, Think, Choose,
Mm-hmm.
Building Emotional Intelligence for Young People, basically grades 5 through 12. And in that, it was basically how to develop skills in emotional intelligence, which um, I separated out into intrapersonal intelligence, that's knowing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I separated into know yourself, accept yourself, and manage yourself. And in each of those lessons, there were different lesson plans and before and after guidance for people, excuse me, for students to check before and after learning. And then the interpersonal part of it,
Intelligence. Yeah.
the skills there include connecting with others, communicating with others, cooperating with others, and handling conflicts with others. So within
You
the
hit them
school,
all 7 areas, but of course you would. You know your stuff. It's your book.
yeah,
Stop,
yeah,
Think,
this book.
Choose. Building Emotional Intelligence in Young People. By the way, where do we find the book? Is it on Amazon? Where can we purchase
There
it?
may be a few copies still on Amazon, but I
Okay.
have basically the last remaining copies.
Ooh.
I was given copyright from originally was published by a publisher called Zephyr Press in Tucson.
Okay.
When the owner retired, she gave it to Chicago Review Press. And then after they had had it for about 20 years, they said, well, we're moving on to different things. So they allowed me to have the last remaining copies and have any rights that I need to
Hmm.
reproduce or revise it and so forth. When I did the book originally, they also hired an artist to do these beautiful posters for each of those 7 areas. So now the trend in schools is called social emotional learning, which is basically the same thing. There's always trends in education where something morphs into something else. And so that's what that's become. But when I look at the intrapersonal and interpersonal, since I have retired, I've added the transpersonal aspect of who we are and understanding ourselves. And so it's kind of like adding social, emotional, and spiritual
Hmm.
learning to it. And of course, in public schools, you can't really include the transpersonal spiritual part. That's when in 2016, I formed an LLC called Creating Conscious Connections. And with that, I've done some training seminars and retreats, looking into the skill set in each of the areas that I call reach in and connect with yourself, that'd be intrapersonal, reach out and connect with others, interpersonal, and reach up and connect with the divine. Not that the divine is up there, but it's just a way to show a transcendence kind of thing.
Got it.
So the back of my card says, connect with the divine source of your being for the benefit of all. Reach in and connect with yourself. Reach out and connect with others, and reach up and connect with the divine. And each of those areas, just like the curriculum for as social emotional learning, has different skill sets and different ways to explore, because each individual will find their own ways to reach in and connect with themselves, reach out and reach out. So that is kind of the uh, basis of the whole thing of creating conscious connections. And related to that, I also teach classes in several metaphysical areas. Um, one being intuitive arts. I read
Hmm.
tarot cards, and I have taught tarot classes and other classes for a long time. And I've learned dowsing, and teach beginning dowsing classes. And all of this I can do in person and also on Zoom. In fact, I like doing it on Zoom because I'm able to reach a broad variety of people all over the world. And since I can teach these classes in Spanish, it opens up a whole nother um, group of people that might want to learn these things, and so on. Now and then, so I kind of there are 3 basic areas in my metaphysical practice that I like to teach about. One are the intuitive arts, which includes tarot, oracle cards, that thing. It's all together. That's called cartomancy, divination with cards.
Okay.
Also, what I call psycho-spiritual. Even now, there are psychologists who are starting to use tarot in their work. And so psycho-spiritual is what you might consider the intersection of psychology and spirituality, because what we think and feel affects what we do, and it also affects what we believe about who we are on a broad metaphysical sense, and what is our purpose in life and all of that. So that's all under the umbrella of psycho-spiritual. And then also spiritual development, where I teach about understanding a lot about our energy, looking at chakras and auras and how to develop certain skills for what we might call spiritual intelligence.
Got it.
And with that, I have written a lot of blogs when I was part of Awaken and Discover. Now I am also with the Tucson Paranormal Society, and I have more of the metaphysical, and spiritual aspect of that. And we are reorganizing, and we will be having a website coming up, developing pretty soon, where I can have all those blogs and so forth. So anyone who's interested in the Tucson Paranormal Society, you can contact me and I can give you the website and so forth. And then I also write articles for the Arizona Paranormal Times, which one of the people
Wow.
that I met in the Tucson Paranormal Society, he has a digital quarterly magazine, and that is very simply found at Arizona Paranormal Times. And he's working on a new edition coming out in January because it's every quarter. And for that, he wants to have people who'd like to write articles, and they don't have to be in Arizona, and people who want to advertise in the magazine, because that allows for a broader reach to people when you have your own customers coming to the magazine. And so the advertisers could even be plumbers or teachers or anybody that might like to advertise. Again, they can go to Arizona Paranormal Times.
Yeah.
Articles in there also. And one of the things I love to do is to write. And another book that I wrote was called The Big Picture of Life. And that is a book that I wrote in conjunction with two other people who had written a book called Greater Reality Living. One of the people is Dr. Gary Schwartz, who is a professor at the University of Arizona in the Consciousness Lab. And then another person, Mark Pitstick, who is the founder of the Soul Phone Foundation.
Oh, okay.
And I met them both at an afterlife conference in Scottsdale. There were a few years where they had some annual events. And since they knew that I had worked with young people, they asked me to collaborate with them to write this book, which is geared towards teens and young adults. But we've even had adults who enjoyed it because it explains things in a simplified way. And for that, I love the fact that now the big picture of life talks about how we know what happens after we die, or how we think we know, because my philosophy is we never know until we go, really. But it has a lot to do with just some philosophy and some understanding about what happens after we die. And one aspect of that is the concept of reincarnation. That after we die, we may come back here in this dimension, here on this earth or somewhere else, to have other further experiences. So what I loved about writing it was that at that time, my 10-year-old grandson, who was really into video games, he gave me about a 2-hour seminar on video games and how, in any video game, you create an avatar that represents you. And that avatar has certain strengths and skills and abilities and powers. And so you go through the game and you have all these experiences. And then after you reach the highest level, or whenever you decide to finish with that
Okay.
game, you start a new game. And then in the new game, you have a new avatar with new powers and skills and so forth. So that to me was kind of a metaphor for how we come into the life and have a human experience, for example. And so it's kind of like we're living our avatar. And I think Shakespeare said it best when he said, all the world is a stage and we're just actors in it. And then the whole idea of the matrix and everything else. So
Wow.
a very metaphysical, philosophical approach that as I understand it.
My goodness. Well, hold on. We got to remind everyone you are on a roll here, and I'm patiently waiting to say, you're awesome. You are on a roll. Clearly, you love what you do. Right. Katta Mapes joining us here. She's the founder and creator, if you haven't heard yet, from Creating Conscious Connections. And she's based out of Tucson, but working with everyone, right? And she has a psycho-spiritual approach that really is designed to help you become your best being, right? Inside, outside, all around. And I want to ask, as an author, as a realtor, I mean, there's a lot you do. What's currently happening if someone wants to work with you? What does the process look like? Is it a certain program that they have to go through? Do they work with you for a certain amount of time? Can you break it down, how people can benefit from, working with you in a sense? I would love to hear some examples and some stories.
Sure. I'm sorry, I've got allergies here. Um, well, one simple way is to take a class. And basically, the way I set it up is that when I have at least 3 to 5 students, then I will start a class in Tarot. And I actually have a sheet that explains all the classes that I have. And so if someone emails me at Katta, Katta dot mapes, Mapes, at gmail.com, I can send out that list. So if someone is interested, then when I have enough people, I can start the class. That's the beginning way to get to work with me. As an intuitive life coach, again, with my background in counseling and my understanding of metaphysics, I will work with people and help them, um, basically, like you said, find out what they want, what they need to have a greater life, doing what they want to do, and so forth, helping them find their purpose and so forth. And for that, I do use some intuitive arts like dowsing and tarot, and also just my intuition.
So I call
I
you an empath as well. That's what right? I refer to you
Yeah,
that way too. That's okay.
right. Yeah, so I use anything. Like I said, I like to call them the wisdom of the sages from throughout the ages
I love
when I
that.
work. And so so we can have classes, we can have individual intuitive life sessions, and in person, for somebody who might live in the Tucson area, greater Tucson area, I would offer spiritual development classes. Those are best done in person rather than on Zoom because there's a whole energetic connection. So, and then with the real estate, I have just been exploring the idea of helping people who have unique properties.
Okay.
One of the people in the Tucson Paranormal Society described this. There are people who have haunted houses or
Mm-hmm.
houses that just aren't selling, or maybe the energy just doesn't feel right there. So I'm going to talk to my broker and see if he's okay with me specializing in kind of like a paranormal aspect of real estate, helping people clear the energy in their house so it can be
Mm-hmm.
sold. Or even if they don't want to sell it, just helping them clear the
Yeah.
energy. They can feel better in their location where they are. So that's kind of adding another dimension to being an intuitive life coach, is intuitively helping people in their real estate, primarily selling homes, listing and selling homes.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that. And, we still have we have 8 minutes left on the show. We have plenty more time to talk. And what else in particular, since we spoke last, it was a while ago, did you want our listeners and viewers to know about you and obviously the work that you're doing and how it's really evolving?
Yeah, that's definitely involved on this sheet that I have that explains all of the things I have to offer. Another aspect of that is teaching English as a second language or teaching Spanish, um, and working with Hispanic people. What I have found, there are, well, in Tucson, we have a great Hispanic community. And I know some other holistic metaphysical practitioners who are Hispanic. And what we're finding is there's still a lot of resistance many times in the Hispanic community for tarot and metaphysical things because it seems too witchy. So one of my goals for next
Mm-hmm.
January is to get together with my friends and just look at, how if there's some way we could support each other in helping expand the group of people that we might work with and help get beyond that perception. Because again, I see it as intuition and psycho-spiritual, so it doesn't have to be totally woo-woo, but that is often how it's perceived. For example, with the tarot, I just see that as a
Yeah.
tool that helps me with my intuition. I also, when I took a mediumship class a few years ago, I learned about something called ribbon readings.
Oh,
It's back, I don't know, centuries ago.
okay.
Apparently, the seamstress, when they made someone's dress or something, might have leftover ribbons, and they would do a reading with the ribbons. So
Huh.
that's why I call all of these intuitive arts, because it's just finding the right tool to help you connect to your intuition. And so, but like I say, for some people that seems scary. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
some I'm a Christian. I believe I'm a metaphysical Christian. Everything I do in the name of Jesus Christ. And yet I know many Christians who, say divination and fortune telling and all that
Yeah.
is really bad. I see it as gifts of the Spirit. If there are people who are very clairvoyant or intuitive, and anyone can really develop those skills, those are the gifts of the Spirit that they've been given. And so we can't condemn them or put them down, but rather we should appreciate their insight and the ways that they can share their gifts in a positive, helpful way.
Beautifully said. My goodness, you are on a roll. And also, I just want to point out that again, you did English as a second language, right? Which is amazing. Where were you born, by the way?
I was born on the North Coast.
Okay. Whereabouts?
That's the next question. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
that's another little thing I was to let people know that it's not just East Coast and West Coast, but Chicago, Cleveland, Buffalo, are all on the North Coast because on the other side of the lakes is Canada. And then South Coast is New Orleans and Mississippi because that's right into the Gulf of Mexico and so forth.
Well, that was
So
my first time hearing of North Coast, and you probably saw my face. I'm
I
like, huh?
know. That's what I
What?
tell
I'm on the
people.
East Coast. We need to let people know there's more yes, there's North, there's South, there's all different coasts, not just East and West. How horrible of us. That's horrible, horrible. So sorry. I will never refer to that again. Think about East and West Coast. Our
Just
coasts are
tell
just as
people,
important.
I just tell people there is a North and a South Coast to this country.
Oh my goodness. Well, we still have a few minutes left, and I just lost my train of thought. What I was going to say, it happens sometimes, right? And in our last few moments together, I know there's some quotes that you have here. You mentioned that, if you don't mind me sharing, know
Sure.
yourself, right?
Mhm.
To your own self be true. Where there is a will, there is a way. George Herbert for that one, right?
Well, those are simple modisms, or how do you say that? In Spanish, you say modismo, simple sayings
Modalities.
that carry through. They're always applied. They can always be applied. I mean, even in ancient Greece, I think it was, where they had above the where in Delphi, where they had uh, the the wisdom women. So I think it said, "Know yourself." And so this is what I say. We're calling on the wisdom of the sages from throughout the ages, because all of this stuff that we might consider New Age or just finally we're finding out about it. This has been around forever, for a
Mm-hmm.
long, and so we're just maybe relearning it. Just like I said with social emotional learning, um, when I wrote the book and it was published in 2000, that was all about emotional intelligence. And now we're just repackaging and reassigning the name to social emotional learning.
Got it. Well, oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being here, for joining us. And how can people reach out to you?
Well, again, I'll say my email is best way, and that is Katta, Katta, .mapes, MAPES, @gmail.com. And in the subject, if you would just write podcast, then I would know that you found me through this podcast.
Perfect. Thank you so much. A pleasure having you here. And it's been a while. And I just want to say thank you for joining us again. Hopefully, I will see you again soon.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. And to all of our listeners, I hope we all learned a lot. And again, your spiritual connection really helps you guide people. And clearly, it's just one of the other things that makes you unique, let alone all your accolades. Katta, excited that you're back here. Thank you so much. Don't forget to email her, write the podcast here that you heard her here on the subject line. And we got to say thank you. Are you still doing volunteer work as well?
I am in the local community where I live.
Yeah. Well,
President of our technology club, and I
you're
organize volunteer drivers to take people to appointments and that sort of thing.
well, we appreciate your service and all that you do. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Have a
you.
fantastic day. And to all of our listeners and viewers, stay tuned. We'll be right back with more.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.